One ordinary afternoon in Los Angeles, amidst the bustling traffic, an expensive luxury car slowly pulled over to the side of the road. Stepping out of the car was a man in a perfectly tailored black suit, none other than Keanu Reeves, a globally renowned actor. But instead of heading into a lavish restaurant or a glamorous event, he walked toward a corner of the street where an old beggar sat huddled on the curb. His actions piqued the curiosity of those around, yet what happened next triggered a series of strange misunderstandings, culminating in a heartwarming ending that brought tears to everyone's eyes. Before we continue this story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel, because tomorrow we'll have another special story just for you. The city of Los Angeles gleamed under the afternoon sun, a place where dreams were made and broken every day. Skyscrapers pierced the sky, while palm trees swayed gently in the breeze. The streets bustled with people from all walks of life, weaving their way through the chaos. Amidst the cacophony of honking horns and hurried footsteps, a sleek black luxury car slid gracefully to the curb, its engine purring like a well-fed tiger. As the car door swung open, a tall man stepped out, drawing glances from passers-by. Keanu Reeves, the globally adored actor known for his roles in blockbuster films and his grounded, humble demeanor, stood on the sidewalk. Dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, his presence exuded both elegance and charisma. Yet, his face carried an expression that hinted at something deeper, thoughtfulness, perhaps even melancholy. People around him began to murmur, recognizing the star. Phones were discreetly pulled out, their lenses trained on the man who was a constant figure in headlines. But Keanu seemed oblivious to the attention. His eyes scanned the busy street with purpose, as though searching for something, or someone. Then, his gaze settled on a figure slumped against a weathered brick wall a few feet away. An elderly man sat on the ground, wrapped in layers of tattered clothing that seemed to do little to shield him from the chill. His hands, gnarled with age and hardship, clutched a small cardboard sign that read, "Hungry. Anything helps." Beside him lay a rusted tin can, its contents rattling faintly with a few coins. Keanu's brow furrowed. He glanced back at his car, where the driver waited patiently, and then adjusted his jacket. The murmurs around him grew louder as he walked purposefully toward the man on the ground. The old man looked up, startled by the shadow that fell over him. His weary eyes met Keanu's, filled with a mix of fear and confusion. "Do you need something, sir?" the man asked hesitantly, his voice raspy from years of hardship. Keanu crouched down, bringing himself to the man's level. "No," he said gently, his voice warm and steady. "But it looks like you do." The old man's eyes widened as Keanu reached into his pocket and pulled out a neatly folded wad of cash. Without a word, he placed it in the man's trembling hands. The surrounding crowd erupted into whispers, their surprise evident. Some reached for their phones to record the moment, while others simply watched in stunned silence. "Take care of yourself," Keanu said, standing up and giving the man a nod before turning to leave. But the act of kindness, so simple yet profound, had set something unexpected into motion. Unknown to Keanu, a bystander had captured the entire scene on video. However, the camera angle didn't fully convey the context of the situation, leading to interpretations that would soon spiral out of control. Keanu walked back to his car after handing the money to the old man, his every movement drawing more attention from the crowd. Whispers and murmurs grew louder, some in awe of his humility, others skeptical of his intentions. The beggar, still clutching the wad of cash, stared after Keanu, his expression a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. For a moment, it seemed like the story would end there, a quiet act of kindness lost amidst the chaos of the bustling city. But fate had other plans. As Keanu reached for the car door handle, a woman in her mid-30s, dressed in casual clothes and holding a phone, stepped forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Reeves," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "was that real?" Her question hung in the air, and the crowd seemed to collectively hold its breath. Keanu turned, his expression calm but serious. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone steady but curious. The woman hesitated, then gestured toward the beggar. "I mean, did you really just give him all that money? It's not for a movie, right? No cameras?" Keanu smiled faintly, a small but genuine gesture that seemed to ease her nerves. "No cameras," he replied. "Just someone who needed help." Before the woman could respond, a man in a business suit, clearly agitated, chimed in. "You can't just hand out money like that," he said, shaking his head. "You never know what they'll do with it. Drugs, alcohol, scams, it's irresponsible." The remark sparked a wave of murmurs among the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others frowned in disapproval. Keanu's gaze shifted back to the beggar, who was now nervously stuffing the money into his coat pocket, as though afraid someone might take it from him. "I understand your concern," Keanu said, his voice calm but firm, "but it's not about controlling what happens next. It's about giving someone a chance to decide for themselves." The businessman scoffed, muttering something about celebrities and their grand gestures, before walking away. Keanu ignored him, turning his attention back to the beggar. "Hey," he called out softly, crouching down again. "What's your name?" The old man hesitated before answering, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's Frank," he said. "Frank Holloway." "Well, Frank," Keanu said, smiling slightly, "I hope this helps. Use it for whatever you need, okay?" Frank nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. "Thank you," he managed to say, his voice cracking. Keanu stood, glancing briefly at the crowd before stepping into his car. As the engine roared to life, he drove off, leaving behind a street filled with onlookers and a storm of speculation. Meanwhile, the woman with the phone stared at her screen. She had recorded the entire interaction. The video wasn't long, but it was enough to ignite curiosity and controversy when she uploaded it to her social media account later that evening. Later that evening, as Los Angeles transitioned into a glittering tapestry of city lights, the streets buzzed with stories about what had happened earlier. The video of Keanu Reeves handing a wad of cash to the old beggar, Frank, had made its way online. It wasn't just any video, it was a short, grainy clip recorded by the woman with the phone, but without audio or the full context. In the dim lighting and poor quality, it looked less like a kind gesture and more like a clandestine transaction. The caption didn't help either. "Keanu Reeves caught doing something suspicious? What do you think?" It was vague, but suggestive enough to spark a frenzy. The video went viral within hours. Comments flooded in, ranging from praise to outright condemnation. Some admired Keanu's apparent generosity, assuming it was a charitable act. Others, however, weren't so kind. Accusations started flying. Is he paying off someone? This looks like a drug deal. I thought Keanu was different, guess not. Social media platforms exploded with debates. News outlets picked up the story, running headlines that were deliberately ambiguous to capitalize on the mystery. What was Keanu Reeves really doing on the streets of LA? One tabloid asked, alongside a blurry screenshot from the video. Theories ranged from the absurd to the malicious. Some even speculated that the beggar was an undercover journalist, trying to expose the darker side of Hollywood elites. Keanu, unaware of the storm brewing online, spent his evening quietly at home, reading a script for his next project. It wasn't until his publicist called that he realized something was amiss. "Keanu, we have a situation," she said, her voice tense. "That video of you on the street, have you seen it?" "What video?" he asked, frowning. He rarely checked social media and was usually the last to know about online controversies involving himself. His publicist sighed. "A video of you giving money to a homeless man. But it's being taken out of context. People are saying all kinds of things." Keanu rubbed his temples, already dreading the fallout. Let them say what they want, he replied. I know what I did, and so does he. That's not the point, she insisted. The media's twisting it into something it's not. It's bad for your image. Keanu stayed quiet for a moment, then said, my image isn't more important than helping someone in need. I'm not going to explain myself to people who only see what they want to see. Meanwhile, Frank, the beggar, was also dealing with unexpected attention. By morning, strangers had started appearing at his usual spot, asking questions and offering him small sums of money. Some were genuine in their curiosity and kindness, but others seemed more interested in prying into his connection with Keanu. Frank, who had lived most of his life in obscurity, now found himself overwhelmed and unsure of how to handle the sudden spotlight. The misunderstanding began to snowball. Every news cycle added new layers to the story, each more speculative than the last. Keanu's refusal to comment only fueled the fire, with critics labeling his silence as guilt and supporters viewing it as a sign of integrity. The truth, however, remained elusive, buried under a mountain of assumptions. The city that had witnessed Keanu's quiet act of kindness was now a battleground of opinions. But what none of the bystanders or online spectators realized was that the story wasn't over yet. In fact, it was only just beginning. As the video continued to circulate online, reactions grew more polarized. On one side were Keanu's fans, fiercely defending his character. Keanu is one of the kindest people in Hollywood, one comment read. This has to be a misunderstanding. Supporters pointed to his well-documented history of generosity, quietly donating to hospitals, giving away millions to charity, and helping crew members on film sets. They argued that there was no way he could be involved in something shady. On the other side, skeptics picked apart the video frame by frame, looking for clues to support their theories. Look at the way he's handing over the money, one commenter claimed. It's like he's trying to be discreet. Others chimed in with their doubts. Why didn't he just donate to a charity? Why give cash directly on the street? News channels and gossip websites seized the opportunity, holding heated debates with so-called experts analyzing the footage. Body language specialists were brought in to scrutinize Keanu's movements, while pundits speculated about what kind of message this incident sent to the public. The narrative shifted by the hour, with new headlines fueling the frenzy. The beggar, Frank, became an unexpected subject of interest as well. Paparazzi began staking out his usual spot, hoping to catch a glimpse of him. Strangers approached him, asking probing questions or trying to confirm their own theories. A few even accused him of being part of a scam. Frank, overwhelmed and exhausted, tried to avoid attention, but it was impossible to escape the growing curiosity. One particularly aggressive reporter managed to corner Frank one afternoon. Microphone in hand, the reporter demanded answers. Did Keanu Reeves pay you for something illegal? Were you promised more money to stay quiet? Frank, visibly shaken, shook his head. No, he stammered. He just gave me the money. No strings attached. He didn't even say much. The reporter wasn't satisfied. So why do you think he chose you? Do you have some kind of connection to him? I don't know, Frank replied, his voice breaking. He just saw me sitting there and decided to help. That's all. But the truth wasn't enough for the media. They twisted Frank's words into more sensationalized stories. Beggar claims he doesn't know why Keanu gave him money. What is he hiding? The narrative was spiraling further out of control, and both Frank and Keanu found themselves trapped in a whirlwind they hadn't anticipated. Despite the chaos, there were those who saw the situation for what it was, a kind gesture that had been blown out of proportion. A small but growing group of supporters started a hashtag campaign, #BelieveInKeanu, urging people to stop making assumptions and focus on the good he had done. The campaign gained traction, with fans sharing personal anecdotes about how Keanu's kindness had touched their lives. But the controversy showed no signs of slowing down. Every step Keanu took, every moment of silence he maintained, was dissected and debated. His refusal to issue a public statement was seen as both commendable and suspicious, depending on who you asked. The public had split into factions, each more vocal than the last. Amid the noise, Keanu remained steadfast. He knew the truth and believed that it would eventually come to light. But as the days went by, it became clear that the situation wasn't going to resolve itself. Something needed to be done, not for his sake, but for Frank's. By the third day of the controversy, Keanu realized that his silence, while meant to avoid fueling unnecessary drama, was inadvertently harming Frank. The old man's life had been turned upside down, and the growing media attention was making it impossible for him to find peace. Keanu knew he couldn't just stand by any longer. He reached out to his publicist with a plan. "I want to meet Frank again," he said firmly. "This time, I'll make sure people see the truth." The publicist hesitated. "Are you sure? It could backfire. The media might twist it into another story." Keanu shook his head. "It's not about me. It's about doing the right thing. Frank deserves better than this." The next morning, Keanu arrived at the corner where he had first met Frank. The scene was chaotic. Reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers crowded the area, all hoping for a glimpse of the actor. Keanu stepped out of his car, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the frenzy around him. Ignoring the barrage of questions from reporters, he walked straight to Frank, who was sitting on the ground, looking defeated. Keanu crouched down beside him and offered a warm smile. "Hi, Frank," he said softly. "How are you holding up?" Frank looked up, his eyes welling with tears. "Not great," he admitted. "It's been a lot." Keanu nodded. "I know. That's why I'm here." Standing up, Keanu turned to face the crowd. For the first time since the incident began, he spoke directly to the cameras. "This man didn't ask for attention," he said, his voice steady but firm. "He didn't ask for anything. I helped him because I wanted to. That's all there is to it." Keanu's words to the crowd echoed through the tense atmosphere, momentarily silencing the chaotic buzz of reporters and spectators. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every movement and expression. As he helped Frank to his feet, the old man's frail hands trembled, not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that someone was standing up for him. Keanu turned to Frank, his voice gentle yet purposeful. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said. The crowd parted as Keanu led Frank to his car, shielding him from the relentless flash of cameras and probing questions. The silence in the vehicle was heavy, broken only by Frank's hesitant words. "You didn't have to do this," he murmured, his voice laced with both gratitude and guilt. Keanu smiled faintly. "I did," he replied. "No one deserves what you've been through these past few days. Let's make things right." The car pulled up to a small, discreet hotel on the outskirts of the city. Keanu had arranged for Frank to stay there temporarily, away from the prying eyes of the media. Inside the quiet lobby, the actor ensured that Frank was settled into a clean, comfortable room. "Take your time," Keanu said. "Rest, eat, and let me know if you need anything." Frank sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes glistening. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Keanu paused, leaning against the doorframe. "Because no one helped me when I needed it most," he admitted, his voice soft but steady. "And I promised myself that if I ever had the chance, I'd do better." Before leaving, Keanu made one final stop. He arranged for a doctor to visit Frank. "It's just a checkup," he told the old man. "You've been through enough. Let's make sure you're okay." As Keanu walked back to his car, he was met by a group of reporters who had trailed him to the hotel. Instead of dodging their questions, he raised a hand, signaling for quiet. "I'll answer one question," he said, his tone calm but firm. A young journalist stepped forward, her notebook trembling in her hands. "Why did you help him?" she asked, her voice quivering. "You could have avoided all this." Keanu looked her in the eye. "Because it's the right thing to do," he replied simply. "Not everything has to be complicated." The simplicity of his answer stunned the crowd. For a brief moment, even the most cynical reporters were silent. But Keanu knew this was only the beginning. To truly set the record straight, he needed to go one step further. The following day, the media frenzy around Keanu and Frank reached its peak. Speculation, debate, and misinformation spread like wildfire, but Keanu's calm response to the reporters the previous night planted a seed of doubt in the minds of even his harshest critics. The simplicity and sincerity of his words lingered, challenging the sensationalized narratives. What no one expected was for a second video to surface online. This video, captured by a bystander who had remained unnoticed during the initial encounter, showed the full context of Keanu's interaction with Frank. Unlike the first clip, it included audio, and the shaky camera captured Keanu crouching beside Frank, asking for his name and speaking words of genuine care. In the video, Keanu's voice was clear and steady. "This is for you, Frank. Use it however you need." The bystander, who uploaded the video anonymously, added a caption, "The full story. Keanu Reeves proves why he's a true star, on and off the screen." The video went viral within hours. It painted a stark contrast to the distorted narrative that had dominated headlines for days. Suddenly, the tone of the conversation shifted. Comments flooded in, praising Keanu's humility and condemning the media's rush to judgment. "This is why I admire him," one comment read. "He doesn't just play heroes, he is one." News outlets scrambled to correct their earlier reports, running headlines like, "New video clears Keanu Reeves of misunderstood act," and "Keanu's kindness caught on camera, the truth revealed." Even those who had criticized him initially began to issue apologies, acknowledging their mistake. Meanwhile, the hashtag #BelieveInKeanu gained even more momentum. Fans and supporters shared stories of their own encounters with the actor, creating a wave of positivity that drowned out the negativity. Posts described how Keanu had quietly paid for strangers' meals, offered seats to others on public transport, and donated anonymously to countless causes. Each story added another layer to the narrative, reinforcing his image as not just a talented actor but a genuinely good person. Frank, too, became a focal point of attention once again, but this time, the tone was different. Instead of probing questions or accusations, people began reaching out to offer help. Donations poured in from strangers who were moved by his story, and a local charity offered to assist him in finding stable housing and healthcare. Keanu, however, stayed out of the spotlight. He refused interview requests, declining offers to speak on talk shows or news programs. When asked why, he simply said, "The story isn't about me. It's about Frank, and about how we treat people when no one's watching." His refusal to capitalize on the situation only endeared him more to the public. Social media was flooded with posts thanking him for reminding people of the importance of empathy and kindness. Even celebrities joined in, sharing messages of support and pledging to follow his example. By the end of the day, the tide had turned completely. What began as a scandal rooted in misunderstanding had transformed into a powerful story of redemption and humanity. But for Keanu, there was still one thing left to do. As the truth spread, the public response became overwhelmingly positive. People flooded social media with messages of admiration, not just for Keanu's actions but for the values he embodied. The hashtag #BelieveInKeanu remained trending for days, a symbol of how a single act of kindness could ripple out to touch millions of lives. The media, too, shifted its focus. Outlets that had once speculated about scandal now ran stories of praise. Documentaries and opinion pieces emerged, exploring the deeper meaning behind Keanu's philosophy on kindness. He became a symbol of quiet strength, someone who didn't seek recognition but whose actions spoke louder than any words. Amidst this wave of support, Keanu remained grounded. In a rare statement to the press, he expressed gratitude to those who had come forward with the second video. "It's not about proving anything," he said. "It's about reminding people to look beyond the surface." Frank's life began to change, too. Thanks to the public's generosity and the local charity that stepped in, he was able to move into a small apartment and access medical care. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of stability and hope. But what touched him most was Keanu's continued support. Even after the media frenzy subsided, the actor quietly checked in on Frank, ensuring that he had everything he needed to rebuild his life. The crowd's reaction was a testament to the power of truth and compassion. What had started as a misunderstanding evolved into a story of redemption, not just for Keanu and Frank, but for everyone who witnessed it. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: kindness, no matter how simple, could inspire extraordinary change. As the weeks passed, the media frenzy surrounding the story gradually died down. But for Keanu and Frank, the journey was far from over. The experience had left an indelible mark on both their lives, and the lessons it carried were ones they would never forget. Frank's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. With the help of the local charity, the donations from strangers, and Keanu's quiet support, he began to piece his life back together. For the first time in years, he had a place to call home, a modest apartment filled with second-hand furniture but brimming with newfound hope. The once disheveled man now walked with a sense of purpose, his clothes clean and his shoulders squared. Keanu, true to his nature, remained largely out of the spotlight. He continued to visit Frank occasionally, each time bringing a thoughtful gift, a warm coat for the winter, a book Frank had mentioned in passing, or simply a box of pastries to share over coffee. Their conversations were unhurried and genuine, filled with stories of Frank's past life as a teacher and Keanu's own reflections on fame, humanity, and the simple joys of connection. One crisp autumn afternoon, Keanu and Frank sat on a park bench overlooking a bustling street. Children played nearby, their laughter carrying on the wind, while the golden light of the setting sun bathed the city in warmth. "I still don't understand why you stopped that day," Frank said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "You could have driven past like everyone else." Keanu looked out at the horizon, his expression thoughtful. "I guess I saw a little of myself in you," he admitted. "There was a time in my life when I felt lost, too. I didn't have much, but I was lucky. There were people who helped me when I needed it most. Maybe stopping for you was my way of paying that forward." Frank nodded slowly, the weight of Keanu's words settling over him. "You've done more than pay it forward," he said. "You've reminded me that there's still good in the world." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a young woman holding a small camera. She approached hesitantly, her face a mix of nervousness and determination. "I'm sorry to bother you," she began, addressing Keanu, "but I just wanted to say thank you. The story about you and Frank, it's inspired me to start volunteering at a shelter in my neighborhood." Keanu smiled warmly, gesturing for her to sit. "That's wonderful to hear," he said. "But the credit doesn't belong to me, it belongs to people like you who take action." The woman stayed for a few minutes, sharing how the story had changed her perspective and motivated her to make a difference. When she left, Keanu turned to Frank, a knowing look in his eyes. "See? You've made an impact." Frank chuckled, shaking his head. "I think you're giving me too much credit." But Keanu wasn't exaggerating. The ripple effect of their story had extended far beyond the initial incident. Social media was still abuzz with people sharing acts of kindness they had witnessed or participated in, all inspired by the simple gesture that had sparked such a profound chain reaction. One notable example came from a group of college students who started a campaign called Small Acts, Big Change. They encouraged people to share stories of compassion and generosity, no matter how small. Within weeks, the campaign had gone viral, spreading to communities across the globe. Meanwhile, Frank decided to channel his newfound stability into something meaningful. With Keanu's encouragement, he began volunteering at the same shelter that had once provided him with meals during his hardest times. He spoke to those who were struggling, sharing his own experiences and offering words of hope. His story became a testament to the idea that it's never too late to rebuild, no matter how dire the circumstances. One evening, Frank stood in front of a small group at the shelter, his voice steady but emotional. "I thought my life was over," he said. "I thought no one cared. But one man stopped, and that made all the difference. It reminded me that kindness is powerful, it can save a life, even if it's just one." In the audience, Keanu watched quietly, his presence unnoticed by most. He wasn't there to be recognized or celebrated. He was there to support his friend, the man who had gone from being a stranger on the street to a symbol of resilience and hope. As Frank finished his speech, the room erupted in applause. Keanu clapped along, a small smile playing on his lips. For him, this was the true reward, not the headlines, not the public adoration, but the knowledge that a single act of kindness had sparked something far greater. Later that night, as Keanu walked out of the shelter, he reflected on the journey that had brought him there. The misunderstanding, the backlash, the redemption, it had all been worth it. Because in the end, it wasn't about proving a point or defending his reputation. It was about showing that compassion, even in its simplest form, has the power to change lives. The stars shone brightly above Los Angeles as Keanu got into his car and drove away. The city that had witnessed his quiet act of kindness now felt a little brighter, a little more hopeful. And though the world would eventually move on to the next story, the impact of his actions would linger, a reminder that sometimes, the smallest gestures can leave the biggest marks. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt journey. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more meaningful stories to light. Stay tuned, there's always another incredible tale waiting for you tomorrow.